Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wunder Wisdom Podcast. I'm Chris Patton, and you are my friend.
Scott Patton, as always. Glad to be
Always.
here.
You haven't changed your name or gone underground anywhere?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, I'll pay attention. So today is Tuesday, January 25th, all day, I believe, and we are well into 2022. And I know a lot of people are feeling like, you know what, any year's better than 2020 and 2021. And we're into it. And then some people go, well, we're into what? Like, what's changed? So it's kind of the same and it's kind of different. But I don't know about you. I'm feeling like there is a change to this year. I feel like there's a quickening. There's movement. There's something afoot. And I read a lot of things and I watch a lot of things, and there's a lot of suggestions about why, and I buy them. I think this year is going to be different. How are you feeling?
The exact same way. The absolute exact same way. I learned from a guy by the name of Erwin Laszlo. He has like 47 like nominary PhDs and stuff like that. Like he's a world thinker. I think he's like a Nobel Prize winner for something crazy. Anyway, he's talked about whenever a system is in chaos, there's a sense of order that can emerge. And the greater the system is in chaos, the more order kind of emerges. And so it's kind of like the classic, when something breaks down, there's more room for a new system to kind of take hold. And I feel the quickening in the exact same way. I think our society and even our individual lives have been kind of so shaken up that, there really isn't going back to an old system. I think we get caught in a narcissistic trap thinking that we can just go back to old ways. So I think the kind of chaos of 2020 and 2021 kind of births this new opportunity for new systems that's societal and that's individual, and kind of, how we organize our lives as well.
No question. But if it's all we know, how do we know how to imagine something different, right? We fall back on what we know is all I'm saying, which is narcissistic or not. I don't know about that, but if it's all we know, it's all we know, which is why we get nostalgic about going back to something that we thought was better. I don't think it was. I think we were headed for this for a very, very, very long time, longer than we know. And you and I have talked about, this is the remodel. This is the tear down, the renovation part of life on a collective and individual level.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I like when things show up in many different areas in life. It's kind of like there becomes like almost a meta condition which emerges. And so the same process which governs how you build muscle is similar to the same process in which it seems like how societies kind of re-engineer themselves. And it's the same thing that, the Kali, and I forget what the other one is, but it's essentially, I think it's the old Indian.
Is it Pele? No, Pele is destructive too, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I forget what it is, but it's that old, I believe it's, from the Indian tradition of destruction and construction. Things have to fall apart to give way to a new system. And the same way, it's the reason you work out. You have to break down your muscles so that you can kind of rebuild stronger. Anyone who's been sore after a hard workout, it's kind of uncomfortable, but there is always kind of an optimistic feel with exercise that it's for the better. You've done something constructive. So I think that is the opportunity. When our society, even individual lives, are in this state of like a hardcore exercise, it just gives us the chance to birth, something which is way more stable than before. Because on your note, when you said we're headed for something, I think this weird, crazy 2-year chaos time gave us a lot of time to look into things in our world which are breaking down so quickly that if we don't change, who knows what could be the future. And that's not meant to be a doomsday statement. It's more so of a chance to really redesign our world so that it actually is sustainable. And it's hard, but we have to do it now.
Yeah, we're in it. It's been likened to the birth canal. You're not going back. You got one way out, and there's no reason to stay where you are because it's uncomfortable and it hurts. And yes, it's terribly scary. It's horrific to be born as a baby. I don't remember, but I can imagine, and I'm told that it's terrifying to come out in the world of light and cold and action and movement. And that, when you think about that, that's got to be really, really tough on babies' bodies and nervous systems and everything else. Yeah, that's a good one. Huh. I was thinking about, remember when we renovated our home on Falcon Court, we tore down the entire main floor, moved out for 3 months. We had to. And it seems that this is the truth of any remodel, anybody who remodels a home or an office or what have you. It seems like the tear down part, the construction part, creating the foundation that you build everything else on, takes the most time. And I remember, because I'm obsessive compulsive or whatever, I'm a lot of things, but anyway, I would go to the house at night and I would sweep up after the guys, the drywall dust, the nails that got dropped, their lunch, whatever, because I knew they were going to lay the floor on that. And I was almost in tears looking around. It was week after week after week after week after week. It was, down to the studs, and then building the walls back up and creating something new. And the point of all of that is that's most of the work. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
And then it gets really fun and it moves really quickly when you start getting the paint on the walls, you get the kitchen built, the trim and the floor and everything else. And now you can see something fun come together. Of course, I'm a color person and I like to match, but yeah, it's kind of the same here. Although I went to a rally on Sunday, and there was a doctor who spoke. He was excellent. And he said something about a 7-year cycle. He depressed the hell out of me is what he did. But he said, we're in a 7-year cycle and people were like 2 years in. So buckle up. What's that about?
Well, we've referenced the idea as within, so without. Yes. And I can tell you from your body, I believe it's every 7 years, every single cell in your body turns over. Now, that's actually an extremely interesting concept. And I'm just going to kind of drop a little line and sinker in the water. What really makes up you? If every single cell in your body is completely different every 7 years, what is you? And the reason that I bring that up, not to just kind of bring up a deep idea for the sake of it, but it seems like there's an idea which is consistent and persistent throughout the change. And if there's a 7-year cycle, let's say externally, that means that things change every 7 years. But I think it's an interesting topic of discussion is what is the kind of fundamental idea, the stable idea, which is going to kind of keep us through every single change. Because once we get to the end of that 7-year change, then we're going to be in a new kind of change. And so in the same way that, are you the same Chris that was when you were 14 years old and 22 years old? And, you might say probably, yeah. And it's super strange because there's no part of you which is the same. Every single cell is different, right? You're a whole different thing, but there's like a stable kind of idea. And so I think in these 7-year cycles, when things are really changing, the question is, what is the kind of stable idea which is guiding the transformation? And there's a psychologist, Carl Jung, I really hope I get this right, but he noticed that our thoughts, every time we have a new idea or we have a new thought or we learn something new, it's like an old part of us dies off and then a new thought we welcome. Let's say you learn something new. It's like that old idea, those old wrong ideas that you had, those die off and then the new ones come in. So it's that transformation of learn something new, old ideas die, learn something new, old ideas die. And because there's a constant change, there has to be something stable there kind of through the transformations. And that's what this prominent psychologist called the self, that which is stable through the transformations. So I bring it up because in the midst of this chaos and this 7-year cycle, I think it's a really interesting topic to kind of talk about what could be that stable idea, which is going to oversee a really smooth, at least as smooth as possible, transformation, because we're always changing and we're always going through cycles. But like, what is society? What is that stable thing which is going to kind of keep us grounded and together, through this 7-year cycle, because we don't know really where it's going.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good topic to lead from. It makes me think of the butterfly, that begins its life as its birth as a caterpillar, and then it goes into the chrysalis, the cocoon. And we often use cocooning as something comfortable. I don't think it's too comfortable for the caterpillar because basically the body just melts down to a mush, I understand, and then re-knits itself and then is released from the chrysalis or the cocoon as a butterfly. And the interesting part is it's the same creature, it's the same DNA. So there's the self you're talking about, right? And that's us individually and as a society.
Yeah, we talked recently about the idea of kind of visions and goals, especially leading into the new year. And I'm going to kind of think out loud in this, and I really hope this makes sense. So as that butterfly is, or as that caterpillar is transforming into the butterfly, the fact that it goes kind of down to mush and then into a butterfly, it seems like there is an idea, like we talked about the entire time, which is almost guiding the process. If that kind of makes sense, right?
Yep.
There's a guy by the name of Rupert Sheldrake. He's an unbelievably fascinating biologist from, I believe it's Cambridge University. He found something incredibly important in plants, which is in textbooks throughout, and he has some wicked ideas, which are very cool.
Did he come up with the morphogenic field? Was that Rupert?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Think of that, for anyone who's hasn't heard of that, think of that as like the internet for all living things. There's like an overmind which you can kind of tap into. It's the most logical thing. What's the first thing that we did when we built computers, or at least I guess one of them? There's an internet, because stupid, you don't store the information in the hardware because that can be destroyed. You have a software program. So anyway, he basically gave a really biologically plausible theory for how all human beings and all living things are kind of connected to this metamorphic field, which we draw information from. So but I'm going to just put that aside. It's kind of a fun fact. One of his things that he talks about is the way that proteins fold. And we're not going to get into how crazy complicated.
Sorry, proteins fold.
Yeah, you got it. So we all know the whole DNA story. There's DNA that turns into mRNA, which builds proteins. But basically what happens is they first start out as like a long string. Think of like this beaded bracelet, just along. But what they actually have to do is they fold, and they have to fold into a shape, and it has to be essentially perfect or close to it, or it's not going to work. Like misfolded proteins is a huge issue. What he talks about is there seems to be a guiding force which guides the proteins into their proper folds. And they have so many different options. It's a number that we can't even dream of, like we don't have words for. But the fact is, it's not random because it works so well every time. So he posits this theory that there's something almost like a future vision guiding the present moment. The reason that because it's interesting at the start of the year, people often talk about visions or goals for the year. And, when we're also talking about kind of where society is going, perhaps we could talk about the importance of having a vision and how somehow that future abstract vision actually guides the present moment. And so time gets a little bit weird, but it really comes into play if we're talking about, let's say, a goal for 2022 as an individual or as a society. What is the vision? What is the goal? What is that future abstract stable idea, which is going to guide us through the constant process of the present moment or life? So what do you think about that?
I think it's beautiful. I think that's exactly where we want to go today. What is that saying about being pushed or pulled? We'll get pushed with something until we're pulled with inspiration. What is that saying?
I've heard Tony Robbins say motivation is the pushing force and inspiration is the pulling force.
Okay. Tony Robbins said that because I said that. He probably got that from me.
I mean, No,
but whoever said it, it's brilliant. It's like the North Star, right? It's the guiding light that, and it may even tie into our destiny and our fate. Not that we're going to go down that road today, but, and I like that because in many ways, I think most people, whether they realize it or not, are always on a quest to be better. to change, to be different, even though we don't maybe realize that that's what our soul, our higher self, if we're not present enough to know that that's what we're doing, is we are adapting, because the constant in life is change, right? And we have to keep up, we have to adapt. So I really like that. And but you know, the funny thing is there are dismal statistics around, you know, the usual way of you know, the New Year's resolutions, the usual way of setting goals. And apparently one study, it's just one study, said like 8% of people actually achieve their New Year's resolutions, and more than 80% aren't even close. And there was another statistic that said, unfortunately, we're not even through the month of January, and most people have abandoned their goals that they set. And apparently January 12th was the magic date for that. So we're well past it now, being the 25th. I don't know who's studying this, but and it's often health related goals, right?
It's funny. I think a huge, like, kind of what it means to be human, to take this a little bit meta, has a lot to do with goal setting. And this is just, I find this really interesting. So we think that we are kind of quote unquote advanced beings compared to a lot of animals because we've developed frontal lobes. We have a more developed frontal lobe, and it allowed us to do abstract thinking. And essentially what that means is we can think of ourselves through time. So we can think of ourselves in the past and we can think of ourselves in the future, because it really is just an abstract idea. You know, like, it's not in the present moment, it's just kind of creating an idea. And so perhaps a New Year's resolution is like a chance to practice what it really means to be a human being, because it is like, what's the difference between, you know, let's say like a human being and, like, you know, a monkey or chimpanzee? And obviously there are many, but a major one is the fact that we can invent time, we can abstract time. And a lot of that has to do with goal setting. And you know, it's funny because I don't know if you've ever heard of the, I believe it's a Stanford or Princeton marshmallow experiment. Are you familiar with that one?
I don't know which one. I know one marshmallow experiment, but.
So essentially this one, they took really young kids and they would put a marshmallow on the table and they'd say, you can eat this, but if you wait 10 minutes, thought it was 10 minutes, you'll get another one. And then they'd come back after 10 minutes. And if the marshmallow is still there, they put a second one on the table. And then they go, you can eat this, but if you wait, you know, we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll give you a third. And they basically tracked the kids who could delay gratification, the kids who could actually wait to collect all the marshmallows. When they studied them later on in life, the kids at a young age who could delay gratification were way more successful later in life. And it's fascinating because there's a relationship that we have with, like, time, you know, and it's kind of like how we organize and how we envision the future and how that affects our present moment. And so perhaps, even though technically, let's say, you know, you set a goal and you only get to January 12th, you know, that's, on one hand, you could say that's an objective failure, but the fact that you are practicing just making a goal and then all the things that involves with, I think it's just interesting that you're playing with what it means to be a human. You are kind of abstracting in the future, and then you're organizing your life around some kind of more transcendent kind of version of yourself. And it's a fascinating process that we all do all the time. So, you know, if you've made it this far, stick in there.
Stick in there, yeah. You're almost a month. I like that, transcend itself. That's a cool handle. You know, this makes me think about, and I'm sitting here, you're not very effective as somebody passing on knowledge if you can't remember the details, but there was something I watched, and it was a study of a company that was talking about marketing all over the world and how the marketing had to be different. And the point that was made was that in many other societies than our North American society, we live in the future. We buy insurance, right, to protect ourselves in the future. We invest money for the future. And if you go to some countries, many countries apparently, those people would look at you and go, are you insane? We're not there yet. Like, there's no concept, there's no trust in the future. They're very present and they live in the now. I don't know if that moved our conversation forward, but that is something very real.
Well, what I've been listening to a lot, the idea that you really can only care about the future if you're taking care of in the present. So for example, what, it kind of relates to quote unquote climate change. And that's really, it's not great wording, but anyway, the idea of climate change, you really only get to worry about that if you're comfortable enough where you can worry about something as abstract as that. If you live in a country where you have to walk to get water every day and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, then you really can't worry about a future, because as I just heard a psychologist, but your future is lunch, and if you don't get that lunch, then you really don't have a future. And so I think on that, when you're looking at countries who change your priorities around the future, it's a lot to do with how they're doing in the present moment. And also, I once heard a study that it has a lot to do with language and how you conceptualize, right? Because I forget which way it goes, but if there's a word or a concept for future, it drastically changes kind of how you save money. And so, and it's something like if you do have a word for the future, that you save a lot more, but if there really isn't a concept, then you don't. And let's be honest, there is a relationship between the present moment and the future. And I'll try and kind of keep this on par with goal setting, but let's say you want to lose 50 pounds and that's your goal. Well, how much do you sacrifice in the present moment to get that? Because if you're just going to live a miserable life, to get that 50 pounds, it's like, you have got that future goal eventually, but you sacrifice all the present moments to get there. And then it's like, was it really worth it? In the same way, it's, let's say if you worked incredibly hard and you stored all the money that you ever had in a bank, and then one day it crashes and it's all gone. It's like, shoot, I would have liked to spend that over the 40 years kind of thing. So there is a fascinating relationship between the future and the present moment. How much do you sacrifice in the present for gaining that future? And again, I just think it's about being a human and practicing. There has to be somewhat of a secure future, but you also have to take care of yourself in the present moment. But trends show that the more you take care of yourself in the present moment, the more you can abstractly think about the future and kind of plan those bigger things. So maybe that's a strategic way to look at goal setting for yourself. Am I taking care of myself right now enough in the present moment that I can actually think abstractly and create a sustainable way to get to that kind of future goal?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what you're raising is the balance, right? Is the balance of achieving your goal, because many of us don't. We don't commit. We don't commit enough, or we commit too much. And I'll go down that road in a second, but we don't commit enough. We're not present enough. We don't form the discipline around the tasks that we set for ourselves. And what happens there, the problem is that we disappoint ourselves. And you can't run from that. You can't escape from that. That can be soul sucking. And I think many people suffer from that. And I also think it really contributes to depression, anxiety, just despondency, when we continue to disappoint ourselves because we fail to take the steps necessary. But again, it's finding that balance. And my concern over goal setting always has been goals and resolutions that we set, generally speaking, we set out here. We're here and the goal is here. So it's always outside of us. And when we really wrap our mind around that concept and buy into it, we never get there. We're always the same distance away from what it is we want. Right? So it's finding the balance between achieving what we want for ourselves, feeling fulfilled, feeling proud of ourselves, creating a bit of self-love in that process. Self-love is extremely important. And respect for ourselves too, because we've achieved something greater than ourselves. Really, that's what we want to do. So I like to sometimes or all the time, really break it down into the smaller pieces, which is what we're told to do. You've got your northern light, your guiding star, you've got your mid steps, and then your little steps. What can you do every day? And what I found the most useful concept about that, so creating the discipline's gotten a bad rap. Discipline is good because we know it takes time. It takes at least 2 months to create a habit, because it gets into our nervous system and our cells get used to that, right? So we got to get at least to that point before it gets a little easier. The choice point is, what do we do every day? And my example in our last conversation was for someone who wants to slim up a bit, lose weight, reduce inflammation, whatever it is they want to do, like I'd like to do. Excuse me. The choice point is in the grocery store, because whatever I buy, I eat. Right? So that's where I've got to make the choices. And so even before then, it's your food, it's the management. What have I decided I'm going to eat? Then you buy it, then you make it, and then you eat it. So it's a big, it takes work, and you have to be present, and it has to be a habit that you do. But gosh, the results that come from that kind of food management bears great benefits for the whole rest of one's life, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a sobering realization. If you make a 1% improvement a day, which is like nothing, after 3 months, you're 100% different, like that's a radically new you. And it's true. It's like, it's one small choice. It's one small choice away. And there's a quote from Jack Canfield. He's, I believe, one of the creators of Chicken Soul for the Soup.
Chicken for the soul. Yeah.
Soul.
Maybe there's chicken souls in the soup too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it might be, because if there's chicken soup, there's a soul.
Exactly.
We just solved that problem.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jack. But he's got a quote: enlightenment, but first laundry. And I really like that idea, because it's partly living in the kind of space, you could call it the dream world, the abstract, the goal, the vision, but then it really comes down to the day-to-day, small decisions. And what I've learned recently is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a major branch of psychology. They're huge on actually breaking down goals into their like extremely small minimum goals, and then kind of starting there. And apparently it is extremely effective for that exact reason, is you're able to take your kind of overarching goal, but if there's no kind of action oriented, if there's nothing action oriented thing involved, then you really don't know how to get there, and you're always going to kind of be lost, and there's always going to be confusion. But like you said, if it comes down to, I have this kind of abstract future goal me, and that's going to be the kind of me guiding the process, and then really bringing it down, it's almost like right to left brain choices as the grocery store. And so it's fascinating to have a foot in both worlds, in the abstract reality of what could be, and then how that gets distilled into genuine small decisions each and every day. And what you start to find is, if you make, small decisions, small good decisions every day, literally, you look back in like 3 months and you're like a radically new person, because that new habit is formed. You've literally built a whole new body. And that's I'll wrap up on this. One thing I find fascinating about our body is, Deepak Chopra said it best: the body is not a thing, it's a process. Our body is always changing. Our nervous system, our brain is always changing and adapting. And it takes a lot of energy, and we want it to be that way. You want to use a lot of effort to build a home, because then the home is stable. So it's good that it takes a lot to kind of remodel the body, because if you do put that discipline and effort in, you literally like completely remodel the water, the proteins, the physical structure. You literally build a new you. And 3 months down the line, you're built of the choices that you kind of made. So to me, it's fascinating how it starts on an abstract goal, gets distilled to extremely small choices like a grocery store. And then, because you are a liquid, ever-changing being, then you literally can morph a whole new version of you, built of proteins, of water, of nervous system, all that stuff. That is a reflection of the goal and the choices. It's like it shows up the evidence in this thing. It's so cool.
Drop the mic.
It really is. Yeah.
Boom. That's good. There's so much I could take from that. I wanted to mention that, I think we could wrap up just in that point, but I want to talk about, there's something called the law of sensitive dependence, and that's the idea of the cruise ship, right? It can go both ways. So 1 degree off compass, within time, it'll be hundreds of miles off course. Now, to pull it back onto purpose and path, 1 degree in the right direction will eventually bring it in line with wherever it's going. And, the other thing too is the attachment to ultimately where you end up, right? Do you go to 30 pounds? Do you go to 35? Do you stop at 25? Like, who knows, right? It's good to set the goal and go, but at some point you may go, this is good enough. I feel good. I look good. I'm getting tired of this. I want to move on to something else, and not berate yourself because you didn't make it from 25 to 30. Like, all good. And really to celebrate those points along the way that you have achieved something. So maybe it's every 5 pounds, maybe it's at whatever. Really acknowledge and give yourself a pat on the back would help with feeling better. And the other thing too is the idea of, I learned this from a beautiful woman named Tanaz, who runs Forever Conscious. And she's an astrologer and just a very wise young woman, really like her. She talked about creating, instead of tangible goals, like I want to lose 30 pounds, I want to make, 50 grand more this year, whatever. What about going deeper and asking the question, why do I want to, for example, lose weight? And maybe it's about feeling good in my body and self-love. And we can do that deconstruction in a moment. But soul goals, meaning something broader, so we don't get attached to outside, the outside world showing us that we did it right. Something more about, maybe we want to create more self-love. Maybe we want to develop our feelings of safety and security. And then our definition changes. What is safe and secure? Do I need to have $1 million or 2 or 15 in the bank in order to feel like I'm secure enough? Do I need to be a size 6 woman or whatever in order to feel attractive? Like, what is it why are we going for these goals? Why are we creating this? I want to be better. Awesome. But often we take those steps out to lose weight, to make more money, to become more fit, stronger, whatever, because it's satisfying something within us. And maybe that's why many people don't keep up with their goals or resolutions or whatever they've set, because it doesn't have meaning. It doesn't have meaning. There's no deeper purpose. There's no why involved in that.
That is, I think you hit the nail on the head with the meaning part. You really got me thinking. The foundation of our world is movement. Like, all the atoms, everything in the world is movement. And every single living organism, as far as I know, that we've ever studied, moves. It moves towards something, whether it's light, whether it's food. And the question is, why do things move, including us? Well, presumably because wherever we're going, there's going to be something better for us there. We move towards things we value, or else why move? And I think you literally just, hit the nail on the head with meaning. And it's part of that going 5 whys deep is, what are we really moving for? It's kind of the same question as, what do you really want? It's the most basic question, but it's also the most kind of, you stop in your tracks and go, oh my God, because you won't it's thank God that we have an internet and YouTube, because you can find thousands of people who got the Ferrari, who got the body, who got the championship, who got the promotion. And then they're like, oh my goodness, I was depressed, and I think it probably took enough people to get the huge house and the car and the body, blah, blah, blah. And for them to come out and go, I'm still depressed, maybe even worse now. And for us to have this revolutionary technology to share, I think that's really monumental. And I really, even for a guy like Jim Carrey, he says, I wish everyone gets everything they ever want, because they'll realize there's nothing there for them. And I think it just gets down to that is, what are we truly wanting from the goal? And I couldn't agree more. Why do people give up? It's like, there's a saying, I believe that a famous philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, said, anyone with a why can bear any how. However, if you are missing the why, then there's no way you're going to put up with the how. Why do you want the 6-pack abs? Because then people will like me more. kind of thing. Is it really about the abs? Is it really about the genuine self-confidence and the feeling good? And you start to realize that no amount of sit-ups is ever going to resurrect that feeling, and it's not really going to be stable. You might get it for about 6 seconds, but then it goes away and you're kind of terrified again. So it's something that I have really worked with myself after realizing that once I had my basic necessities met, what I was looking for wasn't in external things. They can provide temporary pleasure, but it's nothing that's lasting. It's like a blip in the radar, but what do you always return to? And so I think crafting that meaning and being courageous enough to sit with yourself and go, what do I really want? I think that is unbelievably important, not only important, but necessary for any goal to be worthwhile and for you to stick to.
Yeah, perfect. Now, just to make clear, we're not bashing wanting stuff, wanting money and stuff and whatever it is that is external, because being abundant and prosperous and having great financial wealth can provide a beautiful life, more experiences, more fun, more moments of ease and grace. Like there's so many things you can do. It's like that. It's like saying, we shouldn't drive cars because cars kill people. Cars don't kill people. The drivers operating the car kill people. Money can fall into the wrong hands just like anything else can, right? So you can use it for good purposes or you can use it for really beautiful purposes. So we're not saying that. We're not saying that's all wrong and we eschew finances and wealth and abundance. That's not what we're saying. But you're right. It's the meaning within it. And I know you want to say something. A couple of experts that I found along the way, Roger Price was the one who wrote The 5 Whys of Purpose. And I'll do that analogy in a minute. Simon Sinek in his video, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. That's a timeless piece of wisdom. And he talks about the golden circle. The what, the how, and the why is the interior. And we could talk about that in a second too. Adam Grant in his book, Think Again, goes to the why. Why do I think this? Why have I always thought this? And is it working for me? It's rethinking our positions and having the curiosity to step back and go, maybe that isn't the way to go. Maybe that isn't what I want. Maybe that isn't the best thing for me, right? And of course, Amanda Lang in her book, The Power of Why. I've had that one for a long time, and it opened up my world at the time. I think it was more than 10 years ago, to see that people my age, particularly, 42. Don't you laugh?
28 and a couple of years of experience, something like that, hey?
Something like that, kid. Yeah, just mum's the word. We and young people too. Education systems, parenting, families, whatever. We've had the curiosity basically beaten out of us. We don't ascend, we don't move to the other grade because we're curious creatures and want to understand why. We move ahead because we spit out exactly what we've been taught, in the testing. Because we've been able to memorize. People who memorize do better than people who don't do it that well. Stuff like that, right? So that pedagogy has not served us. Whereas I know education is getting better and there's newer systems and there's better things happening in the schools. And I'm really encouraged now, honestly. I've been to some grade schools and high schools and I see what's going on, and kids are being encouraged to be themselves. What was considered weird before, now it's be yourself. Like that's what we're here to do fearlessly, right? That's our only job, is to be us and have the confidence to do things as we do and to ask questions and to understand, to try and understand meaning. What is our meaning? You're not telling me what my meaning is. I want to figure out my own meaning. So that's how we drill down to, what we're really doing. And if we want to deconstruct that, the 5 whys, let's say for a moment, let's say I want to lose 30 pounds. That'd be great. Maybe that's too much, but so why do I want to lose 30 pounds? Well, I want to look better in my clothes, maybe. So why do I want to look better in my clothes? So I'll be more attractive. Okay. And And why will I be, how would I be more attractive? Well, maybe men might find me more attractive and love me. And last, why can't I love myself and not worry about everything else? Now, that was probably very poorly done, but that's the idea, right? That's how we back into, here's what I really want. And a lot of it has to do with confidence. It's true. And society telling us if we're not slim and rich, we're really not worth much. That's just a gross, maybe that's an over-identification of what I'm seeing the media to be, but that's very harmful and damaging to everybody, not just young kids.
I can tell you everyone espousing that idea ain't happy themselves, because what are they chasing too? Maybe I don't know if that helps bring you peace or anyone listening, but it's funny.
We can't assume that, but we find out, we hear these stories of, doesn't matter how rich you are, how beautiful you are, you've got all other issues. So why are we valuing that? Maybe we value the people who are happy and loving and kind and compassionate and endlessly giving and appreciative and gracious and the people who best embody that. Why don't we value that?
It could be, 100% could be where we're heading. And you got me thinking on, it's a really interesting concept. When you get down to the 5 whys deep, it starts to almost become, do I really need to do anything to achieve to kind of fulfill that in me? Or is it something I can genuinely sit with myself and kind of resurrect in myself? So let's say it's the body, and then I want to look good for other people, and I want to be valued, and maybe then it gets to, I want to value myself, something like that. A little bit talking of motivation, kind of the push force, and inspiration is that pull force. I think that's what happens when we get in touch with ourselves. We can call it our soul, our inner self, whatever it is, whatever our lingo allows for. I think that's how we start to move from inspiration, is we get down to that 5 whys, and we really get down to like that foundational, that foundational thing of what do we really want. And then we start to realize that it was kind of always there the whole time. The best metaphor that I've ever come across was from Andy Puddicombe, co-founder of Headspace. He was taught as a monk that, enlightenment isn't 5 minutes away. It's not a kilometer away. It's here. Very much like the blue sky. The blue sky is always there. But sometimes when it's cloudy and, the climate changes and there's different weather, you kind of forget, and the blue sky is always there. And I think that's a fascinating idea when we're working from motivation, and that can be a fantastic force to get us moving. There is no doubt. But when we're working from motivation, it's like we're on still the first why. And it feels like we have to move from the inside out to go somewhere different to achieve it. But what I've at least found in my own life is when we get down to that really kind of core foundational element, you realize that you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be anyone different. There's almost like a self-acceptance and a self-love that comes with that. And then you're really working from a whole kind of platform. And then anywhere you moved is naturally going to be inspired, because you've connected with that thing you've wanted for the whole time. It's a lot easier to kind of navigate the outside world, because you now have that internal feeling where you kind of know what you're going for. And so you know what to avoid because you feel the kind of navigation system inside, and you know what kind of draws you in because it goes more that there's like a co-resonance. And so it's fascinating we're talking about goals, because on one hand, thinking of the future, distilling it into kind of little goals, and then watching it transform us, that seems to be the process of the human being. But I also think it's a fascinating idea that more often than not, unless it's a necessity like food or water, when it comes to something of self-actualization or a want or a desire, it's probably something that we can genuinely resurrect and focus on and kind of bring about in our own selves. It takes a lot of practice, and it's not always easy, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. But it does help to know that it's kind of always there. And if we can somehow develop a relationship with ourselves and kind of start from that place of what we're looking for, then it's inspiration, then it's flow, then it's natural. And then, our decisions are just almost, they seem like they're made for us because we're in line with that thing.
So true. And the truth is, why do we do anything? Because we feel better in the having of it.
Truly.
So when it's feeling good and feeling better is the goal, how about we short circuit that and feel good first? And that's the truth about manifestation, is feeling good about it, saying it's already here and being grateful and being in the flow, right? That flow state and in the zone about loving ourselves, loving our life. And let's face it, when we feel good, whatever way, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, we're nicer people. We now have energy to do a lot of the things that we want to do, which hopefully, I think most people would agree, we want to be nice to people. We want to, we need people to be human on this planet. And we have to learn how to get along and play in the same sandbox. We're more likely to do that when we feel good, when we love ourselves, when we respect ourselves, and we train others how to treat us.
True.
When we respect ourselves, others respect us. When we have healthy boundaries within ourselves, we have healthy boundaries with others. When we love ourselves, no one will ever love us any more than we love ourselves. So, it's getting there first. Do you remember, did you want to say something? I think I kept talking and I wouldn't let you say anything.
I just want to say, first of all, it's perfect. And I just want to make a quick comment on that. I know I feel best around people who are, let's say, self-confident and secure. They're not looking for something from me. And then we can kind of develop this like co-resonance relationship that isn't dependency. And, I think if we're talking with human beings, there's a little bit of like, we have a responsibility, to at least do our best to find something in ourselves, to kind of develop a relationship with ourselves, because then what we bring to relationships, relating to other people, relating to the planet, whatever it is, we're coming from a whole place. It's more of a centered place. And I think that vibe that we get when we're around people who kind of do the work to find some source of stability or security, boy, those people are nice to be around. And then, it's just more coherence, it's more resonance, it's more getting along, it's easier, it's less stressful. It would be nice to live in a world where the dominant thing, and we're all able to do it, and we can kind of do it super hard because it takes work, developing, but
here's the thing, if everybody does it, it makes it easier.
It's true.
Like, have you ever been in a room? And I've had this direct experience. I've been with people who are practicing coherence, and that's with heart math. And, when we've gotten together and we've solved problems together in a coherent state, whether people know about heart math or study it, or it was their first time there, it didn't matter. The synergy, the synchronistic, how we got along, the resonance, the coherence in not just within ourselves, but within the group was incredible. Incredible. So I'd love to see a world where that happened. I'd love to live in that world. And that's the world that I'm intending to create. And I'm not going to stop until I do. As a speaker, I was often introduced as a motivational speaker. And I know that's a genre, but I've never liked that title. And I didn't understand why. And then one day I realized why. Can't remember how, but here's the concept. And I didn't get this from Tony Robbins, but maybe it was out there and it just kind of, I picked it up. Motivation pushes you. Motivation assumes that you are broken and you need fixing. And that's bullshit. I like to be called an inspirational speaker. And that is, come along with me. You're cool the way you are. Let's have a little adventure together. All good, dude. Let's go.
Yeah. Even, the word inspiration, it comes from in spirit. And so it seems like it's in just because I know your goal, I think if you're offering motivation, then you become a drug dealer, because people have to come back to you to get that feeling. But if you're offering inspiration, you're getting people in touch with their own spirit. And essentially, you're not telling them what to do, you're showing them how to find the answer. And I think, I agree with you, the idea of having people get in touch with themselves, they become their own masters. You end up being kind of a guide and like showing them along the way in the process. But at the end of the day, it's like the saying, words don't teach you, teach the clarity of your example. when you kind of when you offer your state of stability and security and coherence, I think people are really taken aback and go, if she can do it, I can too. And when you offer the way, and then, like I said, you're kind of simply the guide and people's unfolding of their own genius and process. So I think that's where inspiration is.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, we know who feels good. We know who we admire. We know who our icons are. And when we ask ourselves why, then we know that they're worthy of our attention, of our money, of our devotion, whatever. Right? And we can't get around it. It's often a feeling. It's a resonance of sorts, and people will resonate at different levels. But the point is that somebody has appealed to our energy. And I like people who resonate with me, and I know you do too, on the warmth, loving, confident scale. But you're right, people who are full, not full of themselves, people who feel complete, who feel whole, who feel balanced, and who then necessarily operate that way, are the people who don't take anything from you. The true leaders do not need anything from you. They don't need your adoration or your worship. They're cool the way they are. They're so full that they want to see you do the same thing, right? And the people who lead, who need something from you, that's because they're not full. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful who you listen to in that regard, I think.
It's one of the reasons. There's a guy, I've already brought him up. His name's Andy Putticombe. The app is called Headspace. They're, massive. I think they have like 20 million users. And the reason that I trust this so much is because, and with meditation and a guy like Andy kind of leading it, it's no one telling you what to do. And just like you said, with inspiration, they're providing the formal process of how to get in touch with yourself. And, when you meet a monk, because the way that you feel around them, and they radiate the sense of stability and warmth and compassion and kindness. Like, you can walk in a room and you can pretty quickly identify who's one. They just radiate this overall coherence and love. And at least I find they're never teachers. They never tell you what to find, but they know that they trust the process, and they've done the work in the process of getting in touch with themselves, that you just have to be around them and you go, whatever you did, show me that process of how I can find it in myself too. And
I want what she's having. I forget, was that Sleepless in Seattle? I forget, but yeah.
But I think it's the inspirational leaders, not the ones who are saying, here's how you have to be, but here is the process and how I got in touch with myself. And by gosh, it's worth it. I think that's, true inspiration. And then when we get in touch with ourselves, we start to be that radiating of the light for, other people as well.
Definitely inspirational, and it has to come from within. There's no question. And here's the beauty of that. Other than having some instruction in whatever pathway you are attracted to take the journey inward, because that's what life is. It's a journey inward. It's not a journey outward.
Yeah.
Other than that, you don't need anything. You don't need music. You don't need the clothes. You don't have to even be in a room by yourself necessarily. You don't need the crystals. You don't need the incense. It's nice to have all those. And I'm not bashing those. If you love those, love them, use them, but you don't need them. You don't need anything but this technology right here.
It's
right?
true.
Your brain, your heart, your body, and then your soul, your spirit, the animus that works all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's if I may almost kind of finish off in a quote, there's a really wicked human being. I'm forgetting his name. It'll come back to me, but he said humans will continue to invent technologies outside of themselves until they either destroy themselves or realize that everything they're building is already present in a more advanced form inside themselves. And I know that's a mouthful. His name will come back to me in a sec. He's but it's that idea that we really don't need anything. We are so inherently complete, whether you're looking at biologically, mind, psychologically, emotionally. I mean, we need food, water, shelter. But then after that, to me, it is so comforting knowing that there are people like monks who can go and sit on mountaintops and find true happiness and enjoy and whatnot. And I'm not saying anyone should, or even, should become a monk, because I'm not going to do it. But just the fact that they all say the same thing, everything that we've ever needed is inside ourselves already, is present inside ourselves. It's like that. Yeah, it's same idea. We're not a drop inside the ocean, we're an ocean in a drop. Like we have the galaxy of love and compassion, of wisdom, of intelligence within us. It's literally built into us. And like you said, as we continue to go inside and develop more of a relationship, we just discovered there's like a more of an infinity inside ourselves than we could ever dream. And I know that from a biological standpoint, we have 100 trillion meters of DNA in us. 100 trillion meters. It's enough. The DNA in your body could wrap around the world, the equator, 2.5 million times. There's that amount of accrued wisdom and knowledge inside a human being. It's already present inside us, so it's more of an allowance to come through than it is a striving for anything. And I think that's the same conversation of inspiration we've been having.
Yeah, and the other thing is this transceiver that we live in, a receiver and a transmitter. Like earlier you said about the hardware and the software. Memory cannot be found in the brain. So where is it? Right? It's our interface with the quantum field, the morphogenic fields, or whatever you want to think of as, or the muse, if you're artistic, right? We get our information, and we all have the ability and the capacity to tap into that huge, enormous, ginormous reservoir of wisdom and knowledge available from all of creation to present and future, because there is no, anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but so we can tap that when we develop the skill and the capability.
We are the most insanely, the world's best radio that's ever been built, infinitely mysterious. And as we go within, we learn how to turn the dial.
Yeah, move the needle.
Exactly.
Well, that, my friend, has been over an hour.
Crazy.
Yep. And I think that was the bow on the present. And thank you for doing this with me. We're two nerds in a little basket who like talking about, we think about this stuff and we love talking about this stuff. And I guess this message is for all of you who have, thank you for staying if you've made it this far. And thank you, even if you have stayed 5 minutes or 10 minutes. We do this because we love it, because we love talking about these concepts. And if you're interested or want to comment, questions, comments, observations are welcome. So are challenges. Please comment on the social media site that this appears. We'd love to know what you think, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, because we learn too. Whether we agree with you or not doesn't matter. We can agree peaceably to disagree. I am grateful for technology that allows us to do this. You live in Ontario, I live in BC, and we can do this and we can reach anybody in the world. That's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you, Scott. Again, that's, I think it's Wonder Wisdom podcast number 7, I think. We've been off for a while, but we do this when we feel inspired to do it, not because we have to. And so this, I'm not sure what, it's funny, our conversations are different every time, and I'm never sure where we're going, so I don't call it anything. I have to listen after and see where we went and see what I can call it that kind of represents what we talked about.
I think we should just start calling it life, because we talk about so many different things.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, but we generally have a focus.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Anyway, everybody, happy creating 2022. I recently wrote an article called 2022, It's Your Move, and some of this information is in that article. It's been posted on social media. We both wish all of you the very best this year in understanding that, you know, the crappy times, there's value to that. Don't give up hope. This too shall pass, but it's also the process. It's also the journey. It's not just the destination, because who knows what that destination is. But many blessings, much happiness and love and peace as all of us go through at least the next year, and then we can catch up the next time.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.